Attention, please. So, Susan, over to you for the keynote interview.
Well, you don't get rid of me so quickly. So I get the great honor of interviewing the Foreign Minister of Colombia, Luis Gilberto Murillo, who I have a huge amount of respect for. We've not only worked on policy issues on Colombia together, but we've worked on cultural issues.
That's right.
Because Colombia has been a great supporter of our art gallery in New York and some of the activities we've done there. Colombia is in the process of both domestic and international transformation. For years, the US and Colombia has pursued a shared agenda and considered each other strategic partners. And the relationship, some people say is the same, some people say it's in transition, but we are critically important partners for each other in Latin America and frankly globally. So today we're going to have a real opportunity to have a conversation about this with the foreign minister, but along with many other topics. I also want to just say congratulations on being the foreign minister. You were kind of straddling being the ambassador and the foreign minister.
Yeah, that's challenging.
So you get 2 jobs in one, right?
That's right. But they only pay for one, so.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, did they pay for one? Did they pay for 2?
Yeah.
So if we can, Mr. Minister, let's get right into the meat of the interview. The US and Colombia have a robust partnership for many years across several different administrations. How do you see the bilateral relationship today?
First, thank you very much for this invitation. It's a great honor to participate in the Washington Conference on the Americas. And you are champion of Latin America, the Americas, and Colombia in particular, so thank you for doing that. And also thank you to Eric Farnsworth, my good friend, that we discussed many issues here, in obviously thinking about Colombia and the region. The relationship between Colombia and the United States is in a very good moment. It's evolving, obviously, in line with the evolution that Colombia also is going through. Colombia is really implementing very profound changes in terms of democracy, in terms of the structure of the economy, and also in terms of the politics of Colombia. And the United States have been part of it. We have very robust relationship, a lot of exchanges between high-level officials from the United States, from different areas of government, the executive, Congress, and others, and also a lot of officials from Colombia coming to the United States. And as you know, Colombia, in terms of our democracy, is attracting more people from different regions. And the United States have been supporting democratic process in our country. Now Colombia, for example, if you take many regions in Colombia that have been excluded or marginalized, and the situation is very difficult because of poverty, inequality, and violence, people in those regions still believe in democracy, and they went to the polls repeatedly because they continue believing in democracy. And in that regard, we now see many sectors that were not before in government, like participating and being in position of power and authority. And that's changing the conception of what Colombia had as the national interest. And this is very important to take into account. And in that regard, what I would like to say that we are collaborating in this transition of the relationship between Colombia and the United States in several areas that are key for us. First, obviously, climate change, the conservation of biodiversity, but within the framework of social justice. And the support of the United States have been very critical, and there are some indicators of the result of that. First, we are decreasing deforestation. We are moving into areas that we are restoring some of the key ecosystems in Colombia. So that's one key area. The second one will be in relation to peace and human rights.
Okay.
The United States continues supporting Colombia in the implementation of the 2016 peace agreement. And is a key partner, particularly in the area of that agreement that relate to ethnic communities, Afro-Colombians and indigenous communities. We are negotiating, obviously, a new phase of the implementation of peace in Colombia, which is the policy of total peace. And we hope that the United States will assist that process beyond just making emphasis on the 2016 peace agreement. The third area that we are collaborating a lot is migration. I just came from Guatemala, and we have this ministerial with Anthony Blinken and other ministers from the region talking about migration and the challenge that we have. And Colombia is a model in terms of migration with the support of the United States. Colombia has welcomed almost 2.5 million Venezuelans and other migrants to the country. We have in our health systems almost 2.3 million migrants. 700,000 kids are going to our schools. It is very costly because it's almost 1 point of our GDP. And in addition to that, it's like we have the equivalent of 6% of our total population being migrants welcome to Colombia. So compared that is unprecedented. And in that regard, what we are doing now, like deepening this policy, we are welcoming now, and we are working on regulations to welcome 600,000 more migrants to Colombia. And we have the support of the United States. We have Office of Safe Mobility for those migrants that wanted to process their documents to come to the United States. We have those offices in 3 cities in Colombia, in Bogota, in Cali, and Medellin. And also we have 9 cities that have this that we call Center of Integration, Centros Integrates. And they are the one that help those migrants to integrate to Colombian society with the support of USAID and other agencies. So those are indicators of the good health of the relationship. And in addition to that, we have security and drug policy, which is the traditional discussion in Washington, D.C., but that is evolving to other areas, climate change, migration. But also we have issues related to trade and also related to investment. And Colombia continues being the main partner of the United States in terms of our export of Colombia. The main partner is the United States. It's the only country in South America that is still United States is the main economic partner. And we need to maintain that position, but we need more investment from the United States to Colombia in new areas, because we are changing the structure of the economy in terms of moving away from fossil fuels, oil and gas, and to new areas of renewables, and to new areas of agribusiness and agricultural development. So that's very important to keep into account, that change in our economic structure.
So you would argue that, in fact, the dimension of the United States is deepening, the dimension of the relationship and the breadth and depth.
I would say that a year ago, we have the visit of President Petro to the White House, into conversation, very good conversation with President Biden. And the two leaders really found a lot of issues in common that move away from from drug policy to these areas that I'm mentioning.
Right.
And I would say that in those areas, the relationship is obviously deepening. One indicator of that, we have last year 4 visits of President Petro to the United States, twice to the White House to talk about the economy, the APEP and others, once to San Francisco and others in New York. So the closeness and the level of conversation is really now very close.
So let me ask you, you opened the door to Venezuela. This is a really critical moment. Mr. Minister, in the history of Venezuela, are we going to have free and fair elections? And I think this is someplace where President Petro has become very constructive. So
That's right.
tell us what your opinion is.
Well, we hope that the election will be fair, obviously, competitive,
Free?
free, and at least we have an acceptable election process. Colombia have deeply invested in this process because of many reasons. We have almost 2,200 kilometers of border with Venezuela. We restore the relationship with Venezuela because we have also significant Colombian population in Venezuela, and we have almost 3 million Venezuelans in Colombia.
Exactly.
And in addition to we have security issues that are in common. We have also economic opportunities that we would like to take in advantage of. We also have a humanitarian crisis in the border that we need to respond jointly with Venezuela. So for us, what happened in Venezuela have tremendous impact in Colombia. So we cannot ignore that. President Petro, from the day one, said that he would like to play a constructive role in helping, working with the international community, with the United States and other countries, to support Venezuela in their democratic process under the request of Venezuela, because the solution of Venezuela needs to come from Venezuelans themselves. And we organized a conference a year ago of the international community to see what we could do in terms of Venezuela. And the agreement of the international community was that obviously we need to, at that time, to support the process of democratization of Venezuela based on the Mexico agreement. Second, to work on some kind of benchmark of moving into more openness in terms of democracy, but at the same time lifting the sanctions that Venezuela had at that time. And third, look for the way to support the response to the humanitarian crisis in other countries that were suffering from that. We are hopeful that this process will go in an acceptable way. We are in conversations through diplomatic channels with different factors. We have, President Petro is talking to the government of Venezuela, obviously, but also with the opposition. I have been in conversation with opposition leaders maybe in the last year and a half here in Washington with all of them. And what we are trying to do at this moment is to see if all the candidates can have an agreement on provide some kind of safeguard or guarantees for the time after the elections, that all of them can freely participate and know that after the election they will have all the guarantee to continue having a very dynamic democratic process. There is some agreement on doing that. The idea, or at least the proposal of President Petro, that by the way he got the support of President Lula, is to see if that can be ratified in a referendum. So that's like the new process that we are working now that will guarantee that we have like a smooth transition after the election.
So if the opposition were to win, that there would be a guarantee that the leader would be able to take power and it wouldn't be considered an illegal or an unfair election going back to where we are now?
Well, the idea is that they will continue, obviously, in a conversation, they will have all the guarantees, and everybody will feel free and safe to continue within the democratic process.
Got it. So another area, and I have to ask you this question, because I think a lot of people were surprised about Colombia's decision to break off relations with Israel. Can you give us a little bit of the background on that? And it's kind of a dramatic step at this moment, and is there a path to changing that decision or an event that would cause you to want to change that decision?
Well, President Petro has been very, very clear on his position on the conflict within Israel and Palestine. And he was very clear from, I would say, the last 7 months, that it's very important that the Israel government really comply with the international humanitarian law or the law of the war, because what happened there was unacceptable. We condemned the act of Hamas, the 7th of October last year, and we said very openly that this is a barbaric act that was committed. We have been asking and joining other countries, including the United States, to ask for the release of hostages, immediate release of hostages, without any condition. But at the same time, what we are saying is that the government of Israel needs to conduct in a way that fulfills their international humanitarian law, and also the fulfillment of and comply with the resolution of the United Nations, particularly those resolutions from the Security Council. President Petro repeatedly said that. So we were very patient on preparing this, and the last event forced Colombia to make that decision, very difficult decision, that is nothing have to do with the people of Israel, but just with the behavior of the government of Israel, because what we have we had in consideration is that obviously we need to make everything in our hands to guarantee that we have an international order that is based on rules, and we need to encourage countries to fulfill those rules, and this is what is in play here. And this was part of the consideration to make this difficult decision, but we consider that was the right decision based on principle. For example, we are saying if you are thinking about the international humanitarian law, you have to think about some kind of differentiation of the population, because we have civilians that are under attack. You have to think about precaution and also proportionality. It's like what is the limit of retaliation in an international order that have a different level of decency? And that's what is in play here.
Got it. So let me return to Colombia and let me talk a little bit about drug policy, because I think this is changing a little bit in the United States. So, you know, the president, I guess, announced his idea that potentially we should legalize marijuana, and Colombia believes in eradication of all drugs. This may come to pass or may not come to pass, who knows? But what's your view on that? What's Colombia's view on that?
Well, it's about to change that policy. Obviously, it's not effective. It's not effective here, it's not effective in Colombia. So we are proposing a radical change in that policy. First, in terms of what we are doing from the supply side, we consider that like eradicating coca cultivation using fumigation is not even under consideration. So we prohibit that. The second is that we are not prosecute communities, farmers that grow coca because they have no other options. So we need to provide options. And in addition to that, what we are saying that we need to make emphasis on interdiction. And it is going very well. We are seizing a lot of cocaine.
That's great.
Increased 30% in this first part of the year, these 3 months. And also what we saw in terms of the statistics is that was the the highest increase in the last 10 years. So it is working well. In addition to that, we need obviously to work on creating the conditions in those areas for people to enter into legal economies, and that's a huge challenge. We call that policy like holistic, comprehensive drug policy that make emphasis really on interdiction. And also money laundering. When you see the number, for example, you take the funding that United States every year allocate to Colombia, the amount that is allocated to money laundering is very low.
It should be much higher.
Obviously, and that's one of the changes that we would like to see happening. In addition to that,
by the way, I agree with that. I mean, we talk about money laundering in so many different places that, you know, drugs is one of the big generators of money that's laundered. So we need to have all the precautions.
Exactly, and you know that United States learned a lot, and the international community, in looking for those funding and working on money laundering from terrorist organizations, but not really. Those lessons need to be applied also in prosecuting those who are laundering money from drugs. So that's something that we would like to make emphasis in this new phase of the drug policy. And in terms of the demand, we also consider that you have to do more in terms of controlling the demand of drugs, particularly cocaine, but it is changing globally. We see that some of the demand is moving into Europe, another part of the world. So like responding jointly to that challenge would be very important.
So I think, Eric, is our time up? Yep. So our time is up. I want to thank you, Mr. Minister, for this wonderful conversation. We look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. Let's give him a really...
Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
No, gracias a usted.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we have a short break, so if you'd like to get coffee, refresh yourself in some way, we'll be back in about 10, 15 minutes. We'll call you back in. Thank you for joining us for the first half of the program. We look forward to seeing you for the second half very soon.